Today. Are we good here? Check, check. It's so weird to start a gospel sermon and say, can you hear me now? Because it's hard to think about the day of Pentecost, them talking and saying, can you hear me now? Are we good? Are we on? And if only those sermons had been recorded, right? Actually, they were in the book of Acts. But being here this morning, this is my third time to talk to you today. And I think I'm probably, just to let my sound guys know, I'm a walker. I'm all over the place. But what I don't want to do is let my mics get in the way from you. So I may stay right here, and that'll be different for me. But guess what? If you don't like people that walk around, you got your wish this morning. I live in Columbia, south of Nashville. If you notice in the bulletin, my name in the bulletin is Tate Ayres. And so if there's anything you don't like today, send an email to Tate Ayres, and he will take care of that. My mama named me Taft, T-A-F-T, and that is a really hard name for a lot of people. It was actually after a movie she saw with a guy in it named Jack Lemmon back in the day, and one of our Nashville friends, Larry Gatlin, some of you know him. Larry said to me, he said, "Where did you get your name from?" And I said, "Well, it's an old movie with Jack Lemmon in it." And he said, "What's the movie called?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "How old are you?" And I told him, and he goes, "Before you die, you need to figure out what movie it is." And so I still have no idea what movie that I'm named after from a character. But that's been my name, Donald Taft Ayres, and my grandfather's Donald. The family went with Taft, and it has been a fun life being Taft Ayres or Tate Ayres, however you want to call it this morning. Tonight, we're going to be talking about, at our Back to School Bash, about pride. And about what pride is, about how pride has hurt a lot of people, how pride has destroyed a lot of people and families. And we're going to spend time tonight in 1 Samuel 25, the same way that we did in class. In class, we looked at the peacemaker. We looked at Abigail, the peacemaker. I talked about her being beautiful and intelligent. And tonight, we're going to spend more time looking at the man whose name was Fool, Nabal, and also look at David and what the things that he did in his righteous anger. So that's going to be tonight at 5 o'clock. I had fun this week. Connecting with Spencer. We were talking about stuff. I was messaging him. We were going back and forth. And we were talking about a time in my life when I was in college. And I told the first service this morning, I felt like a millionaire because I would drive over to a church in Wardell, Missouri, and I would preach, and they would give me a check. And I would go back to the dorm with a check, and I would walk in there like I was the richest man around. But we would always go and eat at a, air quote, steakhouse there in Kennett. And so we were catching up, talking about that this week. He was bringing up some names that I hadn't thought about in a long time. And that is my favorite thing about being a traveling preacher. I will walk in and I will play the game with you for an hour of, do you know so-and-so? And do you know this person? So I'll give you some places this morning. And if you want to catch up with me today, feel free to drop some names. I grew up at the Creve Hall Church in Nashville. They cut a hole in the fence, Tom Holland did, where I could walk through and go to church every week. And so he taught me how to preach, taught me how to fight, taught me how to do a lot of things in the parking lot of Creve Hall. Served a church in Memphis for 10 years, moved a couple times after that, doing outreach and involvement ministry. And now we live in Columbia, south of Nashville. And I'm going somewhere, it feels like, almost every week these days. Let me tell you this. There is a church that I've been serving with a lot on Sunday mornings. And at this church, this is the historical church where David Lipscomb preached his anti-war message the first time. Now, if you're not familiar with that, he preached his message. He talked about the fact that he didn't think that brothers should be killing brothers just for a flag. And he went through this whole talk about it. And he had his opinions and he had his scriptural backing that he felt good about. But the mother church down the road found out that he was preaching this. And they found out that he was preaching this. They got upset about it. And are you ready for this? They sent a group of 12 down the road, which is now Franklin Road, to lynch David Lipscomb for his opinions. And so if you think that churches have turmoil around here, around Memphis or Nashville, I preach every week at a church where they tried to kill David Lipscomb for his message. So I'm sure this morning that we have a lot of peaceful people. Nobody Everybody's going to try to lynch me at lunch, and we'll be good. We're going to spend some time in Isaiah chapter 6, and our message this morning is going to be entitled A Glimpse of God, if you see that on the screen here. But I want to begin by reading something to you from Isaiah 6, and it's a passage that we spend a lot of time in and that we talk about a lot when we think of a commission. People that are sent out. Because what I said this morning, I'll say again here, today, if God gives you Monday, it's a day to put your Sunday in action. So the songs that you've led us in this morning, we should be able to stand in the back and ask people, do you remember singing X, Y, and Z? Do you remember singing this song? Because if you don't remember it before you go out the door, you sang it in vain. Woo! You sang it without meaning, all right? And so we need to be able to sing songs. We need to be able to look at scriptures. We need to be able to put some things into practice that will help us go out and do and be people on a Monday that put our Sunday into action. And so it's real common to go to Isaiah 6 and to go and read what was read for us this morning, where it says that, Lord, here am I, send me. Here am I, send me. Go and tell these people to be ever hearing but never understanding, ever seeing but never perceiving. Make the heart of this people calloused, make their ears dull, and close their eyes, otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, turn and be healed. It's really common for us to live in the prophecy, to live into this and say, man, I'm a Christian, I worship at Valley View, and every day that I go out, man, Taft, I even got a coffee mug that says it. As for me and my house, and I got another one that says this, here am I, send me. It's really easy for us to say that and to say that's a part of who we are. But this morning, I want us to take a glimpse at God. And I want us to look at God in a way that we're supposed to be able to look at Him when we come together as the church and ask ourselves this question, this honest question. Do I see passages like this sometime where it says, here am I, send me, and think, that's a really good passage for Michael and for Spencer. That's a really good passage for our elders. Oh man, Taft, we're going to have a mission Sunday. And there's going to be a board, and it's going to talk about the places where we're doing mission work. And God bless them. That's a really good passage for them. Or do I hear verses like this and read verses like this where it says, here am I, send me, and think this, there is no such thing as an unsent Christian. Every person who says, I believe in Jesus, Jesus died for me, okay, and because He died for me, I've been baptized into His body, I walk as a created person, new every day, His workmanship, His masterpiece, Ephesians 2 style. I am sent. I'm sent to work. I'm sent to school. I'm sent to my house. People can go into all the world, and they can also go across the street. People will say, you know what, so-and-so goes to a Christian school, but I don't go to a Christian school. Guess what? Youth. Every person here who goes to school, if you go to the school, it's a Christian school. Because that's a dark place where light is now there. If you say, Taft, my workplace is not a Christian workplace, if you go there, it is. The minute that you go there, it's a Christian workplace because there's darkness and there is light now there. And we're really good at living in this moment. But then we stop and we think, what led them to this moment in Isaiah 6? A glimpse at God will show us that there's a lot of components that go into feeling like a person who is sent. The Lord gave my wife and I 4 kids. 3 of them were birthed to us, and 1 was adopted into our family at a day old. And every single one of those kids teaches me something different about God because of the way that they download Scripture and the way that they put it out into our lives. And my oldest son is the perfect legalist. And if you don't know what that means, thus saith the Lord, it's black and white. I read it one time. This is what it means. There is no fudging, okay? He is the best legalist in the world. I tell him that he's got a great future ahead of him. But here's the way that I love how he lines it up. just a few months behind him, there's a little girl named Marley. And her name is fitting if you think about Marley and you think about Bob Marley, because she is the ultimate hippie. And she is right behind him, and for her, it is about love, love, love. Like everything is here. And so to watch them battle it out is hilarious until they start asking me questions. And recently, and I did this in our first service, I'll do it again here. Recently, they started to have some questions about things that happen at Easter, about things that happen at Christmas, about things that happen, the excitement when you lose a tooth, okay? And that led to a lot of questions that they also had about God. It led to a lot of questions that they had about who God is and about what He is and about His truth and all of these things. And I hope you're still tracking with me on this. And they said to me, they said, "Dad, have you ever seen God?" And then they asked me this question, and I wanted to tell them, yes, I've had this moment where I've seen God face to face. I wanted to be able to tell them this and to paint this picture for them. But my answer was this: I can't wait to see God's face. I can't wait to be in front of God. And we started playing these little games with each other about what are you going to ask Him, and what would you do if you could have a glimpse at God. And my son, who's the legalist, he said this, real serious: "Dad, I've been thinking about this, and this might sound a little bit weird. But when your kids tell you that something's going to sound a little bit weird, you buckle up." And he said, "I think it would be a really good thing. And I think people would do better, and they would behave better if they could," wait for this, "if they could just go to hell for about 5 minutes." And I looked at him and I said, "What? Where's your mom? Like, why are you saying this?" He goes, "Dad, I'm serious. If for 5 minutes people could just do that, I think the game would shift. I think it would change. I'd do better." And he started telling me all these things. Well, without missing a beat, my daughter says, "Dad, I don't think this is going to sound a little weird at all." And when somebody says that, they're kind of giving the jab. And she says, "I think that everybody would do a little better if they could just go to heaven for about 5 minutes." And I went, "You are my child in whom I am well pleased. Like, I love you. I will hug you and talk to you." But she said this. She goes, "What do you think that would be like?" And we started talking about it. And I said, "Hey, guys," and I crafted this message a few years ago. I said, "Guys, to get a look at God, to get a glimpse of God," I said, "we can see that in Isaiah chapter 6. And that's what I want to do with you as a church this morning, is show you something in Isaiah 6 that is pure, that is holy, but that is a glimpse of God. But hear this part. It's something you get to do every time you come together. Every time you come together as a church, you get a glimpse of God. It doesn't matter if you're white. It doesn't matter if you're black. It doesn't matter if you have a mullet. It doesn't matter in your life what you are doing, how you're designed, how you are built. You get a glimpse of God when you come together. And this happens in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. It says, "In the year that the earthly king died, I saw the real king seated on the throne." And look at this description. It says, "And the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphs, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet. And with 2 they were flying, and they were calling to one another, 'Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory.'" The next time that song makes it into your selection of worship, I want you to picture Isaiah 6. I want you to picture these seraphs here singing this to each other in the presence and in the holiness of God. It's something that's special. It's something that's set apart. But then it says this: "At the sound of their voices, the doorpost and the thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke." Now, for a lot of us, this is the kind of church you would describe going, "Oh, that's a little bit of rockabilly for me. I don't want to go somewhere. They got smoke going everywhere. The place is shaking and quaking. Rock and roll for Jesus." You would look at that and say, "Ooh, that's kind of weird." Here in Isaiah 6, it's something that's to be held. In the presence of God, right in the presence of God, it starts to quake. It starts to shake. The temple's filled with smoke. But there's something I want you to catch in verse 5. When I have a glimpse of God, when I am in the presence of God, we have said things before with the word holy, but we have abused it. I talked about my children earlier, and I've got a kid, the one I mentioned, Cole, and everything that Cole loves to do, he loves to strike the Heisman pose. And if you don't know what that means, he loves, if you have anything that he can hold, he would take this songbook right here, put it right here, and strike the Heisman. He would take a little brother, hold him right here, and strike the Heisman. All right? He would do this everywhere that he could. He recently picked up a Bible at our house and hit the Heisman pose, and then, looks like Tim Tebow, and then he dropped it. And he dropped the Bible, and the Bible hit the ground, and it unfolded, and my son flew in, the legalist, and said, "You can't do that. That's a holy book. You can't just throw it around the way you could another book." And Cole looked at him and said, "Well, then give me another one." All right? But he told him, he said, "You can't do that because that's holy." He used that in a positive sense. The same son also described a teacher at Columbia Academy, and he described this lady as a teacher, and here's what he said: "Dad, she teaches us every day, but I don't think that she likes kids." You ever had one like that? They come to teach every day, but they don't really like us. All right? And he said, "And another thing I don't like about her, Dad," and this really triggered me because I'm paying for you to go to this Christian school, is he said, "Sometimes it just feels like she thinks she's holier than everybody else." And I went, "Woo! All right, son, let's talk about this for a minute." We've taken the word holy a lot, and we've flipped it around, and we've used some negative things with it. But when we talk about the holiness of God, when I get a glimpse of God, what I do when I am in His presence, what I do when I am in His holiness, is I realize that I am not worthy. Now, let me say that again. Because the Lord's church is not about a collection of people that have a name on the sign that says Church of Christ, and that means come up here on the hill to this church because we've got all the answers, and blessed are those who find it. We don't treat it like, hey, this is the Lord's church, and we're so happy you made it to the church on the hill. You made it in. You passed a test. We've got the Holy Grail here. You found it, and now you can get your picture made and put it in the Olin Mills directory. We say, there's a fountain free. There's a fountain free, and those people that are thirsty can come here and drink because we are all people who have come together, a glimpse of God in His holiness, and said these words: "I am not worthy. I do not have this figured out." There are moments when people ask me spiritual questions, and the best thing that I can say is, I don't know. There are times when people look at me in my life, Taft, and I am messed up. I've said some words. I've done some things. I've mishandled relationships. And I realize that in a glimpse of God, in His holiness, that I don't deserve everything that's been done for me. And if that's something that's a challenge for you to say, look here at what a prophet says in verse 5. In verse 5, in the presence of God, Isaiah says, "Woe to me, I cried, for I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips." I want to ask you this right here. If you're realizing what's taking place, it's Isaiah, a prophet. It's Isaiah, a prophet. And the number one job of a prophet is to do what, church? To speak. To speak the oracles of God. So the number one tool for a prophet is what? Their mouth. In the presence of God, a prophet says, "My lips are dirty." In the presence of God, a prophet says, "I have a mouth that does not work. I have a mouth that is filthy." Let me translate this for you this morning. If you could go to heaven for 5 minutes, like my kids said, if you could be in the presence of God for a few minutes, and let's say you're a master carpenter. Let's say you're really good at your job with your hands. In the presence of God, what you say is, "Man, dude, I thought I could do a lot with these hands, and I know nothing." Well, what you do if you're a skilled orator, you are there and you are in the presence of God. And in the presence of God, because of how dirty and filthy you are in your life, you say this: I can't even talk. I don't have the words. Those of you that are doctors, teachers, you have to really engage your mind a lot. You have to really think on a higher level than a lot of us. In the presence of God, you say this: I don't know anything. And in the presence of God, a prophet says this: "Woe unto me, for I am ruined. I am a man of unclean lips. I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." You see, all these blocks are being stacked up to get to the point of saying, "Here am I, send me." The pretty stuff. The stuff where we say, "Ooh, that's a good person, and that's a person with a mission mindset." But before you get to that point, you find yourself in a moment where you say this: "I'm bad. I sin. I have messed this up. I have dropped the ball. You know what? I have done things in my life where I am not worthy of any of this. And the next time you think about or you witness a baptism, I want you to engage and think about Isaiah 6. Because the first thing that we see here in verse 5 is him confessing. Him saying, woe to me, for I am of unclean lips. That's the same thing as somebody standing right here and saying, I need Jesus to save me from my sins. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. That's saying I'm confessing who I am. But then look what happens. The next thing that happens here, one of the seraphs in verse 6 flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth, and he said, see, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. When you read this, if you don't smile, check your heart. If I read a passage that says, when I am in a glimpse of God and I am here and I say that there's a process, I am unclean, I am broken, I'm not the dad that I should be, I'm not the husband that I should always be, I'm not the employee I should always be, I mess up as a student, fill in the blank with your role, and you say, I am bad, I am unworthy, we should be able to say that at the church. We should be able to say that to our ministers and to our elders. We should be able to say that with each other. I should be able to say, I botched it this week. Please pray for me. I should be able to say the same stuff that Paul says when he's writing Romans and he says, I don't want to do this. I don't mean to do this. But there's a civil war going on in my soul right now where I don't mean to do these things, but I'm broken. But I'm messed up. Because we won't be able to sing songs like Amazing Grace until we have been equally amazed by our sin. And when he does this and when he says this, there's this atonement that happens. They fly in, they grab the hot coal, they put it on his mouth. It's the same thing that happens when we think about baptism. When we think about somebody coming in and saying, I don't want to be this person anymore. I want to be buried. I want to walk as a new person. And there's that purge that takes place. And there's that cleansing that takes place. And because this happens, when I have a glimpse of God, Christians should no longer say this. Do you believe that you're saved? Oh, that's a tough one. No, it's not. Do you believe that you have been redeemed? Well, I'm going to heaven-ish. I might be, probably. If I don't believe this, then all these things that I read and all these things that I sing about and all of these truths that we're trying to give others are meaningless if I don't believe that I have had my sin taken away and my guilt atoned for. Then we can step into verse 8. Then we can step into verse 8 where it says, then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here am I, send me. If I attempt to say the words, here am I, send me, but I'm not willing to go anywhere, it's false advertisement. And I remember years ago, I told you I grew up in Nashville, and I remember a coach coming to me, and he said, Ayres, I want you to take care of this foreign exchange student. And I said, am I on candid camera? What do you mean? And he said, we've got this student, his name is Takeshi Tarada. We call him Taki. And I told you the joke about my name earlier, Taft. He could not say my F in my name, and so I was tasked all the time. And at the very end, he was a senior in high school, I was a junior. At the very end of this year where we took care of him, we kept him under our wing, we were kind of the anti-bullying guys, don't mess with Takeshi, all right? And he came and he said, he said an imperative. He said, you will take me out to eat before I leave. And I said, what? Ask, like, put a question mark on it, like, can we go to lunch? And he said, you will take me to eat. I said, all right, Taki. I went to my mom. I said, we're going to take Taki out to eat. Can I have a 20? And she gave me a $20 bill, and this is what I didn't understand about economics. I went back to Taki and I said, I'll take you anywhere you want to go in Nashville. All right, anywhere you want to go, I got an Andrew Jackson. Like, wherever you want to go, we will go. And Takeshi said this, you ready? We will go to Captain D's. We went to Captain D's. The order on the bill was $5.37. He ordered chicken, hush puppies, and green beans on this red little tray. And the reason that it's clear as day to me is because when I pulled out that 20 to pay, Taki said these words, you will not pay. I said, no, here's how it works here, man. We pay. I'm not going to juvie. All right, we pay for our food here. Here's what's going to happen. And he said, you will not pay. And he started to get real adamant about why I wouldn't pay. And I said, Taki, I'm going to pay. I'm going to do it. He goes, you will not. And he slams his tray down. And if you can picture a Captain D's with the big neon writing on the glass window, he walks over to the glass window and he points at it. And he points at these words that he had driven by every day of his 12th grade year, where it said this: seniors eat free. He had seen that every day and wondered why all the 12th graders in Greater Davidson County were not coming here. And I laughed and I cut up and said, no prison today. And I said to Taki, I said, no, that's not 12th graders, that's grandparents. That's not what that means here on Seniors Eat Free. And he said, I'm in the 12th grade, I'm a senior. And I said, no, Taki, this is a language barrier, this isn't right. And as funny as this little illustration is, he said these words, and he meant them from the bottom of his heart. False advertisement. He said that to me, and he meant that to me because of his perception and because of his conviction in that moment. It's been a really fun story for me to tell for well over 2 decades, because it makes perfect sense, because it's funny, but because of his conviction, he was as serious as he could be. And this morning, you know what we do? We sing songs. We sing all these songs about sending me and take the light. And little kids are going, this little Christian light of mine. They're throwing their arms out of socket. They're spitting all over the place, going all around the neighborhood. And then we get over here on this side and we say, send the light, the blessed gospel light. And somewhere in between, life happens and we get tired and we get worn out. And we say, oh, I'm not ready. And oh, I can't do it. And oh, that here am I, send me applies to somebody, just maybe not me. And the world says, cute story, but that is false advertisement. It is false advertisement to say that I have been redeemed, to say that I have been bought by the blood of the Lamb, to say that I am His workmanship, to say that I am His masterpiece. It is false advertisement to say that I belong to, you ready? The Church of Christ. And let's break that down. That means a group, church, called out, family, belonging to, of Jesus. Period. That's what it means. It means I'm a part of a group that belongs to Jesus. And when I'm a part of a group that belongs to Jesus, I am part of a church that belongs to Jesus, I have a mentality that says this: that group, my church, no matter the size, is always too small. It is always too small, because Luke 14 style, where he talks about the great banquet and inviting people to it and compel them to come in, there's always room for more. And I won't fully believe this until I have a glimpse of God. I won't fully believe this until I'm in His presence, the same way this took place in Isaiah 6. And the way this message is coming out of holy, 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 woe unto me, for I am unclean, and I have had my sins atoned for. I am now a person who walks in the newness of life. I am now a person that says, man, I've been redeemed. I've been set free. I can be amazed by His grace because I've been amazed by my sin. And that's the message for the church this morning. I fully believe that the number one message of the cross, is a God who wants us to know that we are forgiven. And you know what we do? We spend a whole lot of our lives thinking that spiritual maturity is acting like we don't need that forgiveness anymore. Some of the most mature Christians I know are people that don't say, I've grown out of that and I don't need that anymore. But some of the most mature Christians I know now are people who run to that forgiveness faster and say, that's something I need to engage in, and that's something that I need to be a part of. This morning, if you've said for a long time, man, I get a glimpse of God in my life, I see Him from time to time in people, but you know what? I've thought about putting them on a baptism, I've thought about living for Him and just just making that step, but I need to line some things up in my life and get some things straight and get some things right, and then I'll do it. I said this in the first service. I love to fish. But if you come to me and you say, Taft, we're going to go fishing, but before we catch the fish, we're going to clean them. I say, dude, that's backwards. And somebody outside would say, that's impossible. I want to come to Jesus. I want to be caught. I want to belong to Him. I want to wear His name in baptism. And you know what? Then I want to spend the rest of my days not trying to repay Him, because that's impossible, but trying to respond to His grace by the life that I choose to live every day. And maybe for you, you obeyed the gospel a long time ago. And you obeyed the gospel a long time ago, but if you're truthful this morning, you can say this: I haven't had one of these moments in a long time. And I haven't had one of these moments in a long time where I have said, I need to be restored. I need to be clean. I need to say to my church family, I am of unclean lips and I want to be purged. It is not just a tradition for us to sing a song. It is not just a tradition for us to throw one up there so we can get out and get to lunch. But it's an opportunity for us to engage and to say this: I am in the presence of God. Holy, holy, holy is my God, and I am unclean, and I need to reconnect. If we can help you with that reconnection in any way, we hope that you'll come this morning as we stand and sing on bended knee.
On bended knee.